much for that introduction. So yeah, if you heard correctly, I was an international student in the US twice, so I feel any kind of pain, concern, anguish, I've been there, okay? So I'm with you, and hopefully after today, we'll feel a little bit better. I am going to share my screen so you can see, have a presentation for you. Bear with me here. Okay, there we go. Let me share this PowerPoint. All right, and Tommy, can you confirm one more time that you see a green screen with a US map?
Yes, I do. It says
Perfect.
hi.
Okay, so I'll jump in and kick it off. So hi, everyone, and I want to start off with this screenshot that I took earlier today. I took the screenshot about, sometime like 2:30 or so. I know it's in Spanish, so I won't bother you with the details about it, but it's important for you to know that that screenshot was from one person, an international student that I worked with, and she's describing on this email. Let me actually translate on this text message. Let me translate this little part, and oh, it's not okay, let me do the bottom here. So it says, hello, Lou, sorry, I couldn't answer the phone because I had called her, she didn't answer. I'm very happy because today was my second day at work and the people are very warm to me. I work with 3 women, but I'm the only instructional designer. So Susanna is someone that I worked with, and she applied the same things that I'm going to show you in just a moment. That's my way of showing you that if you apply these things, you can get a job in the US, even in one of the most difficult situations that we have right now because of everything going on. Okay, so I wanted to kick it off like that. And if you speak German, you can tell that it's actually from yesterday because the timestamp there, it says gestern, so yesterday. It's when I had that exchange with her. Okay. Our goals today, here's what I want to accomplish with you today. I want to make sure that you understand what makes you different than the rest of all the job seekers, American job seekers. I want you to know how to develop a job search strategy that works for you as an international student. You know, many of the things that your American counterparts try and do for looking for a job in the US may not work for you. You need to try different things, and I'll kind of walk you through all those. I want you to understand your immigration options. So I am not an immigration attorney, but I will give you a general description of the paths that you have ahead of you and what you can use and what could work. And I want you to learn how to address questions about sponsorship. This is one of the most difficult subjects to engage in, especially during an interview. It's really, everything is on the line and there's a lot of anxiety, and is there a right way to answer those questions? And hopefully as a result of you going through this, you'll feel a little bit better about your job search in the US. So my goal here is to, after going through all this, you'll feel a little bit better about achieving your not just your academic goals, but your career goals in this country. I am going to make an emphasis on points 3 and 4. So I want to help you understand your immigration options very well. And at the same time, I want to make sure that you know how to answer those questions about sponsorship. And of course, you'll be able to ask me any kind of question afterwards, and we should be good. That's a weird number. That's a big number. That's the number that I think of how many job applications I did when I was, at that point I was an MBA student. I was submitting job applications and sending my resume into a black hole. And I feel that I did it about 1.5 million times and nothing was coming in return. And it was driving me crazy. One of the things that I noticed was that when I applied for a job, I encountered this application form that had these little questions in there. Are you legally authorized to work in the United States? And also, will you now or in the future require sponsorship for employment visa status? And I thought, I have a pretty good background. I worked in Europe and Germany. I had a really high executive position. I did some amazing things. Anyone reading my resume should be able to see past these questions and see how valuable I am and say, okay, he selected that he does he does need a work sponsorship in the future. You know, it doesn't matter. We'll hire him. Only to find out that that's not true. I learned the hard way that 99.999% of the time when you see these questions, they're purposely there for a reason. And that reason is to filter out anyone who may need the sponsorship. So not fun, not very encouraging. And at this time in my life, I was doing an MBA at Stetson University, very fairly close from Embry-Riddle. And I said to myself, it's insane if I keep doing the same thing and expect a different outcome. In fact, that is the definition of insanity. I need to do something differently. I need to change my strategy. So I sat down and I said, okay, you know what? I need to take charge of everything in this process. I need to take charge of my job search strategy at the same way that I need to take charge of my immigration process. I need to be the owner of this process. I need to understand it very well. So I actually went and visited an immigration attorney. I sat down and I said, listen, I don't have an employer right now interested in hiring me yet, but I want you to teach me what immigration process I qualify for and what I need to do to be able to get that job. What do I need to tell the employer? How can I explain my immigration process to an employer so he or she hires me? And so we worked together. She explained what I qualified for and how I should explain it. And things changed at that point. And especially when I changed my job search strategy, which I will describe in just a moment, everything changed. Here's a picture of my immigration attorney, Antonia Canero. She's out of Miami. And this picture was taken maybe 2-3 years ago at a function. And since then, we have become friends, good friends. She gets a kick. She tells everyone that, she had never seen an international student barge into her office and demand to be explained what immigration processes are available and how to describe them. And that's really what made the difference, all the difference in my ability to stay in the US, okay? I applied, started tweaking things in my job search strategy, and I was able to get a job at a skydiving company. I don't know, well, since you're Embry-Riddle, you know many things aeronautical, and so maybe you recognize Performance Designs. It happens to be the biggest civilian parachute manufacturer in the world. It's based in the land, and I was their marketing director for a couple of years. And this is the company that brought me to the US and allowed me to stay here. I bring this up because I said earlier that I wanted to take charge of the whole process, and you can never turn your back on it. You have to stay very engaged and very, devoted to it. What happened in this case, and the reason I bring it up is because I was checking, we had an agreement, the company would hire me and do get me the residency papers. I'll explain how that happened later in the presentation. And I'm checking USCIS every day to see if my case had been approved, until one day I see, boom, there it is. You are an American resident. And I felt so happy, so proud. And I knew there was a green card coming in the mail. And so about a week or two later, I am checking my mail and I see the USCIS envelope and I freak out. I'm so excited. And this is what I get. Hold on here. Don't get me wrong. She's very cute, but she's not me, okay? All the other numbers, even the ones that are blurred on the screen, I learned. I told you that I was going to take charge of every aspect of my immigration process. I learned what every single number meant in that mumble jumble of almost looks like a code. It was all me. All the numbers pointed at me. It's just that it was not my picture. It took me a whole year of working with USCIS, traveling to Jacksonville to fix this, to be able to change the picture on the green card. And you know what's fun? To travel outside the country, knowing that your records have that picture. I had to do it once. It was not fun, but I got it fixed eventually. And again, this is my way of empathizing with you and telling you that the process is not easy. You can never turn your back on it. You have to be very involved in it and expect surprises from the first day all the way until the last day, okay? I don't mean to scare you. I'm simply pointing out reality, okay? That you have to be vested in this process. You have to take charge of it. You have to be in it, okay? Moving on. you're going to notice in the upper left corner, I put a little circle with a 1/5. That's simply the notes, how far along we're in the presentation. So I've broken this presentation into 5 parts, and I give you a bonus. So the bonus, I will talk about today's situation, and think of that as, I guess, section 6, if you will. And I want to kick off now this part of the segment, this conversation with Maria. Maria was an international student at Stetson University. And I've been working there since I graduated from Stetson. I've been working there for a few years. And so Maria walks into my office crying. And, Maria, what's going on? She tells me how the day before she had attended a job fair on campus. And she told me how she spoke with one employer. And, they exchanged, comments and whatever. And then she went across the hallway to the next one. And as she was walking to this person, she put her hand up and she said, "Stop there. If you're an international student, I don't even want to talk to you." She was kind of baffled. She was taken aback. She turned away, started walking slowly out the door. And the one thought in her mind was, how did she know that I was an international student? And so then it dawned on her, we all have name tags, and my name tag says Maria. And so she went from sort of confusion and disbelief to anger. Like, why would she exclude me from, having a conversation with her based on my name, especially in Florida, where, a good chunk of the population is Hispanic in the first place. And so, I heard her say that, and I said, you know what, Maria, that's not fair, especially knowing you. You're one of the best students I've ever had in my life. I mean, you're great. You're top notch. You're someone who every company should be super glad to have you. And that is uncool that happened to you. And that's the day that I told myself, I am going to help international students get jobs in the US. So hold that thought on Maria, and let's move on. I want to kind of break down some of the things that we need to know. I want to be frank with you. You will take an emotional beating. The same way that Maria walked into my office distraught and crying. If you're like me, I knew that I had an amazing professional profile. I was great academically. I was great professionally. I already had been an executive before. And so I knew that my chances, everything else being equal, would be excellent. And it bothered me that everything boiled down to one thing. Can I work legally in the US? So my entire profile boiled down to that one thing. And I thought it was so unfair and so ridiculous. And it angered me. And if you already started looking for a job, you can probably understand what I'm saying. If you haven't, do know that there's a likelihood that you'll one day feel down, that you'll feel like, oh, why is this happening? Why am I not able to find a job in this country? Know that you're not alone. Know that you need to keep fighting, knowing that there's people out there who can help you. And hopefully you think of me as one of those people who can give you a push. And I hope that you feel a very strong push today to get you going in the right direction. So let's talk about what makes you, an international student, special. I've asked this question to hundreds of international students, and typically the top 2 things on the list are, I speak multiple languages and I have global knowledge, or I know a different culture. Those are 2 phenomenal things to have. I pride myself in the fact that I speak 3 languages fluently: English, Spanish, and German. Now, the reality is that when you go look for a job, language proficiency is not often the differentiator between you and someone else. Why? Well, there are industries out there where languages are super valued. If you're a translator, you bet. If you work in the hospitality industry, yes. But most other industries, the de facto language of communication is English. Whether it's business or science, engineering, we communicate across the globe in English. So American companies know that they can go to other countries and speak English, and they'll find people who are proficient enough in the language that they can take care of business, whatever that business is. So language, you kind of have to put aside as something that you can sell very strongly. By all means, put in the resume, but it's not the one thing that they'll go, oh, thank goodness, right? Proficiency in other cultures. Unless the company that you're planning on working with is they're planning on expanding to that specific market where you have knowledge of, then otherwise, that cultural proficiency will be superfluous. Okay, well, it won't be that interesting to them. So if you don't have those 2 things, What do you have? So I'm going to help you with that a little bit or a lot. The first thing that you have, and you may not sound like a big deal, but this builds onto everything else that I'm going to say. I've actually pulled your GPA, not Embry-Riddle's GPA, but I've pulled a GPA from 2 or 3 universities, and it's always the same result. The GPAs from international students are higher than the rest of the population. And it's not because you're necessarily smarter or because the school system where you come from, it's more robust. It typically comes down to your commitment. And that leads me to the next point. You have more at stake. You came to this country sacrificing a whole lot more than many other of your American peers. And by the way, the difference in GPA tends to be about 0.2. So if the average for the whole university or the rest of the population is 3, you're typically at 3.2. And that tells an employer that you are, academics are academics, okay? If you do better in a class, but you paid more attention, you were more focused, you worked harder, and typically that translates also into a work environment. If you're like me, I sacrificed a lot to come to this country. I left my family, friends, the comfort of the things that I knew and understood, and I came to a place that was, for me, completely foreign, and in many ways it felt random. And so, that's something that gives you an additional commitment. That that when you go to bed, you tell yourself, man, I need to do good because there's a lot at stake here. You also have more flexibility. So if your average American job seeker is only willing to do certain things, certain kinds of jobs in certain locations, typically, because you know your situation, you're willing to make some more concessions than everyone else. You're willing to work in areas, geographically speaking, that maybe others would not be able to take. Okay, you may be willing to take a job title that maybe someone else wouldn't. So there's a little bit of work flexibility built into you that maybe is not so common in an American job seeker. Last and probably most important is more maturity. Let me kick it off this way, guys. I work at Stetson University, and one of my responsibilities is to do academic advising. Lately, I'm seeing more and more parents join the academic advising conversation with their children, their students. To me, that's insane. It's ridiculous that it's happening. And they join me in person and on video, and they're basically managing or running the whole conversation. And so what I usually do is, I'm sorry, but I'm great that you're here and that you want to help, but you're making this student look like someone who's not prepared or doesn't have the maturity or the intellect to be able to hold a conversation, to understand their academic status and all the things that they have to do, that just look very weak. And businesses are taking notice. They're noticing this trend and they're not amused, okay? When I say you international students, each one of you, you have been fending for yourself in a foreign country for as long as you have been here. So if you're a senior, you have been fending for yourself in a foreign country for 4 years. Think about all the problems you had to solve over the course of 3-4 years by yourself or with a very limited group of people helping you. That, my friends, that makes you way more mature, okay? And that is something that you can sell to an employer, and it's very critical that you tell them. And that brings me to the next point. Do not assume they're going to connect the dots for you. You tell them. You connect the dots for them. When to do it? One example. Most interviews, when they finish, when they end, the employer will say, or the interviewer will say, is there anything else you would like to add? Yes, I want to tell you something else. I am more mature than the competition. Everyone else who has been here, I'm way more mature. And they'll probably look perplexed, like, how do you come to that? And you tell them, I've been fending for myself in a foreign country for 4 years. All the stuff that I've gone through over the last 4 years, I had to solve by myself, okay? That disposition and knowledge to solve problems, I'm going to bring to your company. You know what? That's a very powerful statement. If you were to say that in a job interview, oh my God, those extra points, a lot of them, okay? You get a lot of them. So that's a very powerful statement to make. Okay, let's get ready to look for a job. What things do we need to do? What do we need to know? Hopefully you figured this one out already. The way I kicked off this presentation is get an immigration attorney today. If you're a freshman, get that immigration attorney today. If you're a senior, you're not too late. Get that immigration attorney today. You need to be that student, that international student who barges in the attorney's office and you say, hey, I don't have a job yet, but I want you to train me on the things that I need to tell my future employer, my potential employer, of what immigration process I qualify for and how it works, okay? And the simpler you teach me how to say this, the better my chances of getting a job. Trust me on this one. How much will it cost you? Well, that consultation will cost you anywhere from $100 to $300, worth every penny, okay? I'm surprised how often international students assume that the employer has to know what their immigration process should be. They don't have to know anything. They don't have to hire you. They don't have to hire anyone international. That responsibility is entirely 1000% yours, okay? So you should be the one prepared to disclose and explain everything to them in that interview. And so get that immigration attorney as quickly as possible, to $100 to $300. And here's the beautiful thing. If your immigration attorney works like mine, they'll charge you that amount and you officially become their client, and you can reach out to them sporadically over the course of the next year to ask questions at no additional cost. In fact, when the parachute company hired me, I was sitting in the office with the director of HR, and we were sitting there, and we had a doubt, a question about a specific thing in the immigration process that I didn't know about. And so we called the immigration attorney. She picked up, and they had a 5-minute conversation. I didn't have to say anything. She handled everything. She didn't charge me a single dollar more, and the HR director was satisfied. So get your immigration attorney today. If you don't know the name of one, I can provide the name of Antonia Canero. I can give you her email address at the end of this presentation. Usually I have issues with this. You know what? I'm not going to play this video, but I'm going to describe it to you. You see a man sitting there. He looks a little bit Hispanic because he is. His name is Jose. And in this video, he shows how he was applying for jobs as Jose and not getting any responses. And all of a sudden, you know, he kind of looked around. He said, what if I become Joe, which is the same name, just in English? He dropped the S on the name, and suddenly, even the same companies that had not replied before were answering to his resume with Joe. And I feel comfortable saying this, guys, because I am Hispanic as well. I was born and raised in Venezuela. So my legal name is Luis, L-U-I-S. It just so happens that historically, everyone has called me Lou. And guess what I use in my resume? I use Lou Paris. Please don't confuse this situation with prejudices in the American society, because that's not the case. We are, in the US, one of the most open and embracing societies in the world. Trust me on this, okay? If you go to Europe, if you go to Asia, and you want to suffer, you know, from discrimination, very heavy cases there. Not the case here. I've talked to a lot of companies, and I've asked this very question, you know, why would you be concerned about someone who is perceived to be foreign? And the answer is usually the same. They talk about corporate culture. See, people who run companies, they work very, very hard at building the right culture for the company. In fact, most of the CEOs that I interview, and I do this for a living, I interview CEOs every week. They always, one of the points they touch on and they dive very deep into is corporate culture. When they say, well, I have a hard enough time as it is getting my American employees to be part of my culture, how much more difficult will it be to do the same with a foreign national now coming into the mix? So it is more a matter of fear and maybe to some extent disinformation than prejudice, okay? I tell you this just so you're aware of the situation. If you're aware of it, maybe you're more capable to navigate it, okay? So my recommendation here is try to Americanize your resume just to show that you can be part of the team, that you can be part of the culture, okay? So my resume reads Lou Paris with an American address, American phone number, and if there's anything in my experience that sounds foreign, I Americanize that as well, okay? So it's something that can save you a lot of hassle down the road. Get one of these bad boys. If you are listening to this presentation and you don't have a social security number yet, get one. How? Well, there's a good chance the university offers employment opportunities to international students. Find one of those opportunities, whether it's working at the gym or working at the library. uh, find an employment opportunity, even if it's only for 1 semester. The key thing here is to get that number in the middle of the screen where you see 3 digits, 2 digits, and 4 digits. That number will stay with you forever, okay? I remember when I got mine, I actually got mine a little bit later, not the way that I'm proposing that you do it. But let me run you through this scenario. Imagine that an employer says, yes, I want to hire you. I'm very excited to have you on board. Can you give me your social security number so we can get the whole process started to get you that work visa? And you say, I don't have a social security number. Imagine the reaction on the employer side. They're thinking now, ooh, that's our starting point. Our starting point is getting the social security number. So it's one little barrier that you can do away with very easily by getting that job on campus and having that number. Of course, it will say valid only for DHS authorization. That's fine, but at least you have the number, okay? So I recommend that you get that as soon as possible. So your job search strategy. I said before that whatever works for your American friends will not necessarily work for you. So you need to do things a little bit differently, okay? And I'll kind of walk you through the details, but your job search, whatever you hear them say, don't take for granted that will work for you. So let me kind of dive into that. Almost everyone, when you ask them how they look for a job, what they describe to me when I've asked this question can be qualified into 2 general groups. On the left side, you have Monster.com, Indeed, Career Builder. So these are people who look for employment opportunities on online job boards and apply for them. And you know what? It's actually, when you think about it, not a stupid idea. That it's an actual job offer, and you can see it as a numbers game. You need to apply to however many 100 or 1,000 applications until you get someone to say yes. And you know what? It's a very rewarding process. There's a beginning and end. And in fact, at the end of the day, you can tell yourself, you know what? I applied for 40 jobs today. So I feel good, I feel accomplished. Something will happen with one of those 40 applications. And if you do this every day, the number compounds and you tell yourself, I've applied for hundreds, if not thousands of jobs, and one will work out. On the other side, you talk to other people who say, well, I got my job from networking. Maybe their parents knew someone, or maybe they knew someone who knew someone, and that's how they got their job. That strategy to look for a job feels it's a very ambiguous and very amorphous. You finish the day and you're like, what did I do today? I talked to 7, 10 people on the phone, and half of those conversations didn't really feel that I was looking for a job. I was just having maybe small talk with this person, and it didn't get me anywhere. Listen to me carefully. Every single international student that I've ever worked with has always gotten their job because of networking, not because of looking for a job on any of those online job boards. Has it happened? Sure, I believe it. But every single time that someone claimed, oh, I got my job through Monster.com, and you dig a little deeper, they knew someone in the company who said, okay, apply for that job. I'll keep an eye on your resume, and we'll make things happen. That, my friends, is networking. Okay, that's how it works. The girl that I showed you at the beginning, that screenshot of my cell phone, she got that job through networking. Your best chances are through networking for one very obvious reason. All the ones on the left require you to fill out a form that has that question, will you now in the future require sponsorship? You're ruled out. When you network, you're able to bypass some of those security gates, and you're able to get to the hiring manager and get to know them, and they can actually bypass the gate for you. They can do away with that form, or if they see that they force you ultimately to complete it, and they see that you do need sponsorship, it's not a surprise. They're willing to do it because they have met you. So many of the things that I'll recommend are on the networking side of the world. We have a cryptic number on the screen, 39. What in the world could that mean? I want to help you now focus on the kind of company that is most likely to hire you. The number that you see on the screen is the average size of the company that does hire international people to work. 39 is how many employees they have, okay? As you can see, 39 employees is not a very big company. So your best efforts are spent or invested, better said, in a company that has just about 39 employees. That's a small company. And you can go probably, in my experience, you can go as big as a medium-sized company, maybe 300 employees. The reason is because big companies have, when they have a reputation and people, everyone knows about them, they don't have to work very hard at finding the right talent. The talent comes to them. And so it's very easy for them to find the right employees. And so when they grow, they also have internal policies that typically rule out the pursuing work visa applications. Small companies have to fight for talent, and they're more willing to think creatively to find the right people. And one of those creative solutions is, let's apply for a work visa, and then we can find someone who's much better than anyone else who we're seeing here. So as a rule, as a general rule, if you can recognize the name of the company, in this case, like Disney World, you're better off avoiding it, okay? Have I heard cases of people who have been successful with big companies? Yes, I have, but it's more the exception than the norm. And by the way, Disney World, in any of their companies, forget about it. Yes, they'll take you with an OPT with eyes closed. They'll love you with an OPT. And usually you'll think, oh, I'm going to show them what a good employee is. I'm going to work my butt off. I'm going to work for a year. I'm going to be the best employee they ever had. And they're going to want me. And I've seen time and again, people try the strategy only to find out at the end that Disney World says, no, we can't do it. We're not going to hire you. And you wasted your OPT. I hope you know what an OPT is, optional practical training. It's something that you apply for when you graduate, and you can work either a year or 3 years in the United States. So yeah, don't waste your OPT on companies like Walt Disney World. Okay, now we're going to talk about the kinds of immigration paths that you have ahead of you. Maybe you recognize some of the cryptic codes that are on the screen, but if not, I'm going to walk you through them. On the left-hand side, you have H-1B. H-1B is the most common kind of work visa in the United States, okay? On the right-hand side, they're not visas, they're processes, okay? The EB-2 and the EB-3. And I'm going to invest some energy here, and I'm going to invest myself in trying to show you how I'm going to do my best to try to transition you from an H-1B to an EB-2 or an EB-3. So let's look at each one so you understand what each one is about. Let's talk about the H-1B. The H-1B, like I said, it's the most common visa, work visa in the United States, okay? It's probably the one that does bring the most foreign workers into this country, but there are application cycles. You have to apply by April. Actually, you have to apply in April, period. And you get the answer, not immediately, you get the answer in October. And during that time, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if you're going to get it or not. And it does not hinge on how good your application looks or your professional profile. Not at all. It is a lottery system. And figuratively speaking, USCIS is pulling numbers from a hat. And if they pull your number, great, you're in. You can work in the United States with an H-1B visa. But if they don't pull your number, and by the way, there's a cap on how many of these visas are given every year. And if you understand what I'm saying, what I'm trying to say is that there's, let's say, 60,000 visas available, there is 200,000 applicants, okay? So there's a lot of people who are left out, and they have to wait until the next year to apply again, and that may mean that you're, forfeiting your chance to use the OPT and having to go back home. And you're tied to your employer. The H-1B it's connecting you to a specific employer. My brother, for example, had to work for the same employer for a decade until he was able to transition from an H-1B to a permanent residency. You don't want to find yourself in that situation. It limits your ability to earn more income. It scares you that if there is an economic down cycle and they're downsizing and they'll look at you as someone to lay off, you're going to find yourself in a very difficult situation. Can you reallocate the H-1B to another company? You can. The process is relatively simple, but at the same time, hair racing. I've had, unfortunately, close friends of mine who called me on the last day. They said, man, I tried as hard as I could to transition from this employer to the other one because the first one let me go. And right now I'm at the airport having to go back home. you don't want to find yourself in that situation. So how do you qualify for the EB2 or the EB3? These are two processes. Let me emphasize, they're not visas, they're processes, okay? And typically they get you from, you probably all, if you're listening to this, you're probably on an F1 visa status. So it will get you from an F1 visa to a permanent residency, okay? It's very aggressive. When I say aggressive, very quick process. When I did it a little while ago, but when I did mine, I went from an F1 visa to resident in about 11 months. Before COVID, that number was a little more like 18 months. So let's talk about, what these processes are and how you qualify for them. These processes are for a qualified professional, so like a preferred category of professionals. For the EB2, you have to have a master's degree. So if you're listening to this right now and you have you're doing right now any kind of master's degree, any kind, then you're eligible for the EB2 when you complete your degree. If you have an undergrad and 5 years of work experience, it doesn't matter where, whether in the US or in another country, you qualify for the EB2 process. I would assume that most of you would rather qualify for the EB3. The EB3, it's the same as the EB2, it's just how you qualify for the process. The EB3, you would be an undergrad student who just graduated, and you have a little bit of experience in your field. And that's why it's so important that you are listening to this as either a freshman or a sophomore, and maybe even a junior, because now you know that you can invest your summers doing internships. If you can add up to like 4, 5, 6 months in internships in your field of study, whether in the US or back home, then you qualify. You're very likely able to qualify for the EB3. Don't try to qualify yourself for either one. Well, if you have the master's degree, it's a given. But for the EB3, don't try to qualify yourself. Speak with an immigration attorney. Let them qualify you, okay? And the key thing here is that you do internships in the summer or any kind of break so you can accrue enough time to be able to apply for that process. Super efficient process. So how does it look like? If you were to look at a timeline from day 0, there is one critical step along the way to residency. That step is the electronic permanent labor certification. That is a certification that says that you are the only person that this company was able to find at that specific time to fulfill those tasks, those responsibilities. In the past, in a normal economy, in a normal situation, you would have timeframes of 3 months to 6 months to maybe sometimes 9 months to be able to get the perm approval. That is the most difficult part of the process. Once you get the perm approval, the rest is a lot easier, okay? Once you get the perm, your attorney files for a variety of papers, let me call them papers. And there's 2 that are very critical to this conversation. One is the petition for alien worker, and 2 is the change of status. It's a form called 485, okay, I-485. The other one, I think it's the petition for alien work. I think it's I-140. Don't mind the names, but those 2, let me walk you through why they're important. They're important because when you get the perm, then to get the 485 approved, it takes a few more months. From beginning to end, it's about, in a normal situation, it historically has been about 18 months. Mine was 11, but it can take up to 18 months. Now it's a little bit more difficult to assess that time given everything that has happened with COVID and everything else. So the time frame may be a little bit longer. And you may ask yourself, because I get this question a lot, hold on, my OPT is only for 1 year. And you're telling me this takes 2, I'm going to be illegal in the country for some time there. And the answer is no, because of the I-140, the petition for alien worker. When you get the perm approved, usually that second document gets approved fairly quick, usually within a month, 2 months, you get that approval. And that allows you to work indefinitely for your employer until there's a ruling on your request for change of status, the 485. And so that allows you, if your process takes 3-4 years, randomly, you're able to work and stay in the US legally for that time until your case is hopefully approved, okay? So this is what the timeline looks like for you trying to pursue an EB2 or an EB3 process. Now let's talk sponsorship. Sponsorship is something that I want you to be able to command very well when you're talking to, actually, if I were to, imagine you're sitting across the table from me, I'm looking you straight in the eye, okay? And you know you have aced the interview so far, but that question is coming. And I go, hold on, I detect a little accent when you speak, okay? And you know what? You're not supposed to be able to get into ethnicity or background in a conversation, but guess what? In the real world, that happens, okay? And they're gonna go, do you need sponsorship? How do you answer that question? It's a very difficult question to answer. And what I've learned over time, the best way to do it is don't give a yes or no answer. What you wanna say in that case is, listen, I can work for you immediately because I have a permission that has been granted to me by virtue of graduating from my university. I can work for you for either a year or 3 years, whether you have STEM degree or not. In that time, if you like what you're seeing, if you like working with me, we can apply for, you can keep me indefinitely by applying for a work visa. I already have an immigration attorney because hopefully you already spoke with one, and the process is fairly simple and it doesn't involve a whole lot from you. That answer is much better because you are explaining you're immediately available and you're also disclosing that yes, you need the sponsorship, but the process is not crazy or difficult, that you already have spoken and you have already counsel in this regard. From all the companies that I've spoken over the years with, I've learned that there is typically 4 kinds of objections. Okay, I'm going to walk you through each one. First one is cost. If I asked you right now, okay, how much does an H-1B process cost? You would probably give me a blank stare. If I asked you how much the EB3 or EB2 process cost, again, blank stare. And guess what? Employers tend to make that number really big in their heads. They think it's in tens of thousands of dollars, and it's not true. See, the cost of the H-1B is typically about $5,000. EB2 and EB3 are a little bit more expensive, but the employer doesn't have to carry those costs. The applicant can pay for it. So if you have the resources to do so, or if you have a credit card that you can charge those costs to, then I would recommend that you do so. But if someone is, let's say you're in an interview and they say, well, that's really too expensive, you can say, well, hold on, the cost is actually, let me go with the H-1B. It's $5,000, and do you offer end of the year bonuses? And typically most companies do either a signing bonus or end of the year bonus. You can say, hey, we can work into my contract that I forfeit that money, okay? And so you're offsetting the cost of working for them. And guys, let me tell you, housekeeping, okay? Low-end job, okay? Housekeeping typically costs about, each housekeeper costs about $3,000 to $4,000 for the hotel to train. So $3,000 to $5,000 for you as a high-skilled worker, not a big deal for most companies, okay? So don't let cost be the issue why you're kind of ruled out. Effort. Sometimes they think that the effort is great, that it's too big, that it's going to require too much time, and calling the attorney multiple times and having to fill out forms. What a nightmare. Not true. I actually helped once a company go through the whole immigration process for someone they wanted to hire because, of course, I knew a little bit about this topic. And it took me literally about a total of half an hour of my time over the course of about 3 months. 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. So it's not a whole lot of work that you have to do. And you can tell them something similar when they bring up effort as an issue. Legality. They think, well, we may be bending rules as we go through this process. And here's what you tell them. You look them in the eye and you say, hey, this process is really critical for me. I don't want anything to go wrong. More than anyone else, I want this to be all transparent and clear. That's why we're getting an immigration attorney involved. And so when you get them, you tell them that and you say, this attorney is going to make sure that everything is transparent, that you're doing everything right, and that I'm doing everything right. So that's another way of diffusing that tension with legality. And the fourth reason, believe it or not, is that they're concerned you will leave. Now, the way I would answer this, I would say, you know what? First of all, thank you for saying that, because if you say that, you already see me as someone valuable for your company, so you're afraid that I'll leave. If that's the case, I'm willing to sign a contract. You name your time frame, 5 years, 10 years. Okay, let's build it into the contract and let's tie it to a financial incentive. I'll give you an example. My brother works for FPL. He signed a $10,000 signing bonus, and he has to stay with the company for 10 years. Otherwise, if he leaves earlier, he has to return that money. So there's mechanisms that companies have used over time to tie their employees for longer periods for longer tenures. So you can do the same thing. And I'm looking at the watch and I'm seeing we have 10 minutes. I do have a couple more things I want to go over with you, and I'm willing to stay longer beyond 6:30, the time frame, for questions. Okay, I hope that's okay with Tommy and Alicia. I just want to make sure that I give you all the information you actually need. Let's talk about today, and this is the last bit. This is the bonus part. I know we are living unprecedented circumstances. There's a lot of uncertainty, and by God, we have elections next week. What the heck is going to happen? So let me break this down to make you feel a little bit more at peace. I get a lot of questions. Is USCIS backed up? The answer is yes, they are. Okay, historically have always been backed up. Okay, so make no mistake. That workload has increased a little bit. Now, from my understanding, the conversations that I've had with the immigration attorney, I have reason to believe that they have been able to work down those backlogs. I do know that more than ever before, USCIS is making premium processing fees available. So every time you have a chance to pay extra money for expedited processing, go for it, okay? And I know that USCIS is getting savvy about this, and I think you should take advantage of those opportunities. So the other thing to know, do we find ourselves in an economic slowdown, and does it look like a V, meaning that we go sharply down like we did and we go bouncing back up very quickly, or are we going down and staying down for a long time? You know what? I have reason to believe, based on what we're seeing right now, that we find ourselves in a V-ish kind of a slowdown, economic slowdown. A lot of people are going back to work. You're seeing a lot of people. Look at the girl that I showed you at the beginning of today's presentation. She just got a job. So it's happening. Things are moving. I have my own business, not this, something else, and I see the numbers not drop. They're staying up there. And let's talk about industries. Look at these examples on the screen. On the right-hand side, you have restaurants. Restaurants have taken a beating during the COVID crisis. They have had to reinvent themselves. They have had to build ghost kitchens. I know for a fact there's an Italian restaurant that had to switch their menu to Mexican to do pickup, because that would sell more. So restaurants are struggling. And on the left-hand side, do you not think that the people who own Lysol are banking right now? They're happy as happy can be, because that product is sold out all the time. And so my way of telling you that your, whatever degree you're studying, hopefully you have several industries available to you, okay? Look at each one, okay? Take responsibility for your job search and study each one and find out which one has been least affected by the COVID crisis. Let me go here to the next slide. We're also seeing a new world where workers are, or companies are expecting workers to do more work remotely. And so you need to become a super telecommuter. You need to be that person who, even though you're working from home, you can do the work even better than if you were in person. And you can communicate super effectively with everyone else, and you become a video conferencing ninja. By that I mean always look good. So you see right now, you see me wearing a dress shirt, okay? You place the camera, you always want the camera at eye level, because it looks better than if, this angle is always like really bad. And you want lighting to be great. Right now I have two light sources. Look, if I cover them, lighting is not, not this great in this room, but I do this so you can see me well, and it just makes me look a little more professional. That's what I call being a video conferencing ninja. And guys, we have elections next week, okay? And a lot of people are concerned, oh, what if this party wins? Or what if the other party wins? Nothing's going to change. I've talked to several immigration attorneys. Doesn't matter who wins. You are not the target of all the talk against immigrants. It's illegal immigrants that any administration is concerned about. And, Democrats may say something, the Republicans say something else. In the end, all political parties suck at immigration, okay? Trust me on this. We find ourselves in this situation right now over the course of decades of both parties running the country and not doing a great job at immigration, okay? But nothing significant is going to change for you in the immediate future. So you are okay. That, my friends, brings me to the end. I have some resources. I'll stop right here. Actually, let me go this way. I do want to share one screen. I do have a website that helps, Konkeros helps international students. I don't want to sell you on that. I will give you my book for free, and I was meant to give it to you today. It's just that when Kindle publishing is kind of wonky, kind of funky, and so they didn't like the way that the request for the free books was submitted. But I'll get you that book, this book that you see on the screen right now. And I want to share with you, hold on, I do this, the guy that helps international students, that's actually my cell phone number. I'll be frank with you, I am working at maximum capacity right now. If you were to text me, it would probably take me a few days to get back to you, but I will get back to you, okay? So be patient with me, but that is my cell phone. With that, I'll make a pause. I know that we have only 5 minutes for Q&A, but I'm willing to stay a little bit longer until we satisfy any kinds of questions that you may have. And at this point, I'll stop sharing my screen. And here I am, and you can see me, and I'm ready to tackle